지금부터는 여러분과 함께 한국교육학술정보원 서종원 부장님께서 진행을 직접 해주시겠습니다. 저는 여기서 물러가겠습니다. 고맙습니다.
네, 안녕하세요. 한국교육학술정보원 서종원입니다. 원래 커피 시간이 있어야 되는데 저는 커피 시간이 있는지 알고 밖에 커피를 찾으러 갔다가 갑자기 뒤돌아왔습니다. 첫 번째 세션을 바로 시작하겠습니다. 첫 번째 세션은 4차 산업혁명 시대 미래교육은 어떻게 준비하고 있고 어디로 가고 있는가를 주제로 미국에서 오신 한국어라면 미국 스쿨 네트워크의 어떤 체어를 맡고 계신 분입니다. 탐 라이언 박사님을 모셨고요. 또한 미래교육을 대비해서 아주 선도적으로 정책을 추진하고 계시는 어떤 싱가포르 정보통신청의 에드리안 림 국장님, 디렉터 두 분을 모셨습니다. 먼저 두 분을 모셨는데 이 세션에 대한 좌장 혹시 소유정 교수님 자리 오셨나요? 지금 네. 이 세션 모더레이터로 이화여자대학교의 소효정 교수님을 소개해드리고 이 세션의 진행을 좀 부탁을 드리겠습니다. 소효정 교수님을 좀 박수로 좀 환영해 주시면 감사하겠습니다.
네, 반갑습니다. 이번 세션 좌장을 맡은 이화여대 소효정입니다. 네, 지금부터 플래너리 세션을 진행하도록 하겠습니다. 이번 세션의 주제는 How can we prepare policies to promote future education in the era of Fourth Industrial Revolution입니다. 4차 산업혁명 시대에 대비한 미래 교육을 지원하는 정책이 어떻게 나가야 되는지 그 방향성에 대해서 두 분의 연사를 통해서 들어보도록 하겠습니다. 먼저 첫 번째 연사를 소개해드리겠습니다. 첫 번째 연사분은 닥터 토마스 라이언이시고요. 현재 북미학교 네트워크 컨소시엄인 코슨의 의장을 맡고 계십니다. 간단하게 양력을 소개해드리도록 하겠습니다. 뉴멕시코 주립대학 교육과정 박사 학위를 받으셨고요. Center for Digital Education의 수석 연구원, 그리고 Immersion Learning의 회장을 맡으셨고요. 미국의 우수 교사에게 수여하는 밀큰 에듀케이터 어워드를 수상하신 적이 있습니다. 오늘 발표하실 주제는 디지털 테크놀로지는 공교육을 어떻게 변화시키고 있는가, The Shift to Digital in Public Education입니다. 큰 박수로 맞이해 주시기 바랍니다.
Thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be here. I put this slide up because it has my email. If there's any questions or if you'd like to contact me later, we'll go through. I will be the first of two speakers and talking about the change that's going on within our schools. I'm also currently a practicing Chief Information and Strategy Officer for a school district in Santa Fe, New Mexico. So I'm going to present more from a practitioner base within the country, within the United States. And the Consortium of School Networking is a North American nonprofit that looks at ed tech and other issues. And in that vein, the Consortium of School Networking has partnered on the Horizon Report, which is an international group of people that are providing some feedback on short-term and longer-term trends in education and some of the challenges that we face. So the bulk of what I'll present is on those topics. I'm going to start with this exponential change concept. You're familiar with Gordon Moore, who predicted that the number of transistors will roughly double every 24 months. And we're finding, and I found the same things on the expansion of internet within our school districts, this exponential change is now getting to a point where it's going very quickly forward, and we're not able perhaps to keep up with it. We see the exponential change in the amount of data traffic. This is global data traffic. You can start to see that exponential increase across the globe with mobile data. We also see it in our use with digital media and the amount of time, and this is a United States study, where you see in the green This is the use of mobile devices. The blue is computers. And the other connected devices would be gaming type resources that kids or people are communicating back and forth on. You can see the exponential growth, and it's coming because of the use of mobile devices and how fast that has come on. It's taken away a little bit from the amount of use on computers. So we're up to 5.6 hours a day on technology from 2.7 back in 2008. This picture here, there's going to be the finish of this slide. This is technology 20 years ago that now we find inside a cell phone. Now, the most important part of this whole thing is that's my grandson. And so the challenge for me is how do I look at his future in education, and he's prepared for his future as opposed to my future. And that becomes a big challenge. If there's this much change in the last 20 years, what will 20 years of change be for him down the road? Thomas Friedman wrote a book on the age of accelerations. It's not research-based, but it is very interesting, the change and the dynamic of change and how that change is impacting society and our ability to keep up with that, and also how is it impacting, or how could it impact students as we prepare schools in their education in the future. So we talked about this technology exponential curve over time, and the change is going faster and faster. And we start looking at, according to Thomas, the ability for human beings to adapt to that change. And that currently the ability for us to adapt is not keeping up with the ability of the change that's happening in our society. And this is creating a gap in how we use and how we adapt, how we answer ethical questions, how we address issues such as privacy, etc. So his point is that the faster and faster that we, in order for us to keep up with the speed of change, we need to learn faster and govern differently. And perhaps the models of top-down authoritarian type of controls are not fast enough. Certainly in the United States, where you have a local decision that needs to go up to a state decision, where they take to the national level and then laws created and back down, by the time all that happens, the technology has already changed. And we're not answering the right question anymore. So this change not only has to happen in our classroom, but it has to happen in how we run schools and run educational systems. So the challenge is, if we don't know what the future is going to look like for my grandson, then how do I prepare him well for the future when I don't know what that's going to look like? And the idea proposed is that we need to change the way we teach so that it's an acceptance of change. Most of us don't like change, or we like change as long as it's somebody else that has to do the changing. So how do we help our children to understand the dynamic nature of change, to be able to deal with that change in a way that's going to be productive for them in the future? You know, a lot of times when we focus on the technology side, we get so distracted by the technology that we forget about the core actors within any learning environment. And Richard Elmore talked about learner, teacher, and content being the core three actors. And if you change any one of those three, then you have a corresponding change that happens on the other two. We're not going to buy a technology and put it in without having a corresponding change here. So that really talks about the governance of our schools, the organization of our classroom, and how do we pivot as the technologies change the way we do our work. So if we want to increase performance by students or by teachers, or content, which now can a lot of times be technology related, we have to put together a model that looks at supporting all of those areas, and that we make the change because we're looking for improvement here. We're not making the change because we've got a new cool technology to put into a classroom. It starts to change our conversation. One-to-one isn't a value, one computer per student isn't a value in education. unless we put it in to impact the way we're teaching and learning. The influence of technology, though, can dramatically change the way those three actors engage. If we're looking at digital content, students will interact with that differently over a longer period of time. Teachers will have to learn new skills in order to fully effectively engage those technologies to improve the benefit for students. And that's what the game changer has been. Traditionally, our classrooms are very much set up like this, and for a couple hundred years, the teacher drove that instruction in an environment that looked the same, other than if was there 15 individuals or 100 or so individuals. Now we can change the learning environment so that all of the actors are impacted in a different way, and that creates a reason for us or an opportunity for us to redesign our educational system, not controlled by the size of the room, the time of the day, the buses that come in, all of those operational controls, in a lot of cases that directed what we can do and when we can do it, can go away, and those barriers aren't going to be about the classroom size, and we can start looking at how do we expand the learning opportunities for all of our kids. And some of our most challenged kids aren't the ones that are showing up every day. It's the reluctant learners, or those learners that have not been traditionally successful in our classrooms, United States, that would be kids in poverty or kids of color. How do we create an environment that is welcoming for them? So I'm going to go to the Horizon Report. This is the 27 Horizon Report, some of the findings that we've seen on the report, and I'm also going to talk about where we're going now. The Horizon Report is no longer going to be done for K-12, and COSN has got a different initiative. Adrian, my co-presenter, is also on that international committee that's coming back with findings, looking at some of the hurdles that we're facing, some of the accelerators that technology can take advantage of, and I'll talk about that briefly towards the end. So we looked at three areas. What's on the 5-year horizon for schools, what is driving educational change, and what are the critical challenges, and how do we strategize solutions or mitigate the risk of those challenges within our schools. So on the first, trends in education, the three areas are divided into short-term trends. We're seeing that coding as literacy is becoming a bigger issue across the world, as well as the rise of STEAM, which is science, technology, engineering, arts, and mathematics. We're seeing a growth in the development of these sciences within our classrooms. And these are things that are going on today, and so they're not seen as a long-term effect, but the things that are current. Midterm, 2 to 3 years out, we're looking at a greater focus on how do we measure learning? What should we measure in learning? And should we even measure learning are big questions that across the United States we're having an impact because we may not be measuring the right things. And if you think about what does my grandson need in 15 years, we don't know what that job is, or it may be that he's going to be a pharmacist, but the job of pharmacy has so dramatically changed. How do I make sure that he's got the right skills to be successful? So this has been a big question. Redesigning learning spaces, I'm going to talk about that in a little bit, and then long-term trends. How do we advance these cultures of innovation? And part of the challenge is our systems are not designed to be innovative. In the United States, the national government, the state government, the local government all put constraints on the educational system, and they try to force that system into compliance, which then leads to a lack of innovation or a lack of meaningful innovation, and then deeper learning approaches. So I'm going to take a quick look at these two in the efforts of saving some time. The three essential things, and one of the challenges we have is people like to put new things in, but they put them in without knowing what problem they're solving. Why are they doing what they are doing? It may be an interactive whiteboard that they want because they think that might be cool, and they put it in and hopefully it'll change education, which is backwards. It really needs to be, what are the challenges I'm facing in this specific classroom, and then what technologies can help me and bridge that gap. And then we want to focus on how do we build the human capacity of people to use that, both the teacher, the student, the parents, all of that changes, and that helps then create this culture of innovation based on a learning need, not on implementing a technology. STEAM or STEM, now we even get STREAM, which is adding reading into the initiative, is looking at not necessarily the data, but how would I use problem solving, critical thinking, and other schools that are part of computer science to change the way we do reading, writing, math, art, and the other content areas, not so much as to put in coding per se, but the strategies that a computer scientist would use as they're solving problems. Maker spaces, or learning spaces, redesign. I went to New Zealand last year, and this is a picture of a school, and they decided, they had a large earthquake a few years ago that damaged or destroyed so many of their schools that they had to rebuild, and they decided instead of rebuilding based on the past, let's rebuild to the future. And so they designed, instead of a teacher having 25 students in 3 different classrooms, what if we put 75 students into one classroom, make that a larger space with different types of learning opportunities, and then the teachers, as they work with children, would group the children based on their skill levels so that they could meet the needs of advanced learners and meet the needs of challenged learners. So they have direct space, or direct instruction. So a teacher would sit with a group, independent spaces where students can work alone or in small groups. They have makerspace areas where they combine arts and science and cooking and technology, really a hands-on area. And from the pictures here, you can see this is the direct instruction, and this is all one large classroom, and they focus on problem solving, critical thinking, and they found that the focus on those soft skills has developed their skills that they have with their academic gains. In the challenges that are impeding ed tech, the solvable challenges, the ones that we feel are nearby, the committee looked at authentic learning, doing things that are relevant to the learner, improving digital literacy. We'll talk about that in a second. And some of the more difficult things, how do I rethink the role of teacher? And I think if we think about, not only do we need to change what teachers do, we also need to change what principals or school supervisors do, as well as what happens in central office. And then again, this using computational thinking in the design of our instructional resources. And then the wicked trends, or the things that are challenging for us, are how do we close the achievement gap? Because the technology will benefit those students that are part of the mainstream or those more affluent kids because they can afford the technology at home and have access at home, internet connectivity at home, and they have people at home that know how to use that. And so when we use the technology, it can broaden the gap between the kids that have and the kids that have not. And then how do we sustain innovation through significant changes? In the United States, a lot of the teachers and principals and leaders within the community are at a retirement age, so they're old people like me, and they're leaving the system, so they start something, and then somebody new comes in. How do we sustain that change throughout the system? So let's look at a little bit about digital literacy, and I'd like to broaden this to digital citizenship. This is a book by Susan Bearden, a friend who now works at COSN, and talk about what is digital citizenship as opposed to just developing the skills of using technology or understanding how to use technology. We also have to understand the responsible use, the ethical use. How do our kids have the ability to make decisions about how we interact and use technology, because the technology doesn't have ethics or values. It's not good or bad. And we can easily use it for the bad part if people don't understand the consequences of the decisions that they're making while they use it. So my children, my children's children have to have the ability to understand what's right or wrong in the use of this. If all of these jobs are going to be automated through AI or robotics, et cetera, what happens to those people and their jobs? How do we make decisions that will make sure that people have an opportunity to be successful? So that leads us to this challenge: how do we best prepare our children with this concept of digital literacy, so that as a citizen in this digital world, they have the skills not only to compete for jobs and good college and educational benefits, but also have an understanding of how to use the technologies in a way that are appropriate and beneficial to society as a whole. And then our third area, which is ed tech developments, maker spaces and robotics seem to be a growing trend that are happening currently or very soon. That 2 to 3 years out, we're looking more at analytic technology. So we've got big data and data on everything, but we don't necessarily have what should I do with that data in a real-time manner. And we'll look at artificial intelligence and the Internet of Things. We have computers now that are able to diagnose cancer better than their human counterparts. We have variety of predictions about how many jobs will go away or how different the job looks in the future. So we don't know what the end state of, or what the future is going to be. We don't know what the job requirements in 2030 are going to be. We don't know what defines success. And when we have a model that says, here's what you have to do to become the fastest sprinter in the United States, and all of a sudden that changes what that sprinter has to do to get there, then all the rules as we prepare from K through 12 have to change. And if we don't know what the rules are, how can we set the skills and talents that our kids need to have in order to be successful? So one area that was talked about early was student achievement, or student agency, or personalization. So this learner starts to take more control over where their learning path is going. This is the opposite of being helpless. It's taking control and the capacity to act on their learning in a very leadership-oriented way as opposed to a passive-oriented way. So our job here is to prepare students for anything as opposed to prepare them for skills that we previously had. This is a chart, it's probably hard to see from the back, of what these predictions for far term, midterm, and near term. 2017, as you can see, robotics and analytics are near term. Virtual reality and artificial intelligence are moving towards a longer impact, as well as the Internet of Things. And the Internet of Things also shows up earlier and then goes away and comes back, because the Internet of Things means something different today than it meant 3 or 4 years ago. And as we come to grips on the impact of that, we're seeing that it's coming back to use. I don't want to cut off my partner here's time. These are some of the basic trends that are happening that we're looking at. This internet safety is a significant issue. Privacy of students, privacy of their data. How are they responsible for that? How do they hold the vendors or the people that are using that data is a big issue. COSN has developed some resources around that. Digital equity, how do we assure that all students have opportunities and not just the most affluent in our group? So with that, some of the challenges that we're starting to see change, BYOD versus one-to-one, bring your own device versus the district providing you a device has changed to we're doing both of those. When we start to look at safety, we're really looking at not only what are the impacts to students in education, but where will that safety lead us in the next 10 years, and start to look at all of the various impacts. IT, we never used to have to focus on providing security barriers and meeting a lot of challenges. Most of them were from kids doing things inside the building that we didn't want them to do. But now we're seeing attacks on a daily basis, and it's becoming a significant part of the job to protect the data and the integrity of that system within the school district. COSTN has a number of resources that will address each of these topics, but I'd like to invite Adrian and have some time for his presentation. They're going to have a question.
네, 감사드립니다. 그럼 두 번째 연사분을 소개해 드리도록 하겠습니다. 그리고 잠깐 안내 말씀을 드리면은 저희가 세션을 조금 더 인터랙티브하고 참여적으로 만들기 위해서 질문을 받고 있습니다. 그래서 여러분들 혹시 들으시다가 질문 사항이 있다 그러면은 심플로우에 질문을 남겨주시면은 저희가 확인을 하고 나중에 연사분들과 같이 함께 논의해 보도록 하겠습니다. 꼭 질문 남겨주시기 바랍니다. 자, 그러면 두 번째 연사분 소개해 드리도록 하겠습니다. 미스터 앤드리안 림, 지금 현재 싱가포르 정보통신부 IMDA의 디지털 리터러시 및 혁신 국장을 맡고 계십니다. 간단하게 양력을 소개해드리겠습니다. 하버드 교육대학원을 졸업하셨고요. 앞선 발표에서 언급이 된 미국에서 발행한 호라이즌 리포트의 K-12 에디션의 전문가 패널로도 참여를 하셨습니다. 2011년도에는 JCI에서 수여하는 아웃스탠딩 영 리더에게 수여하는 상을 수상하셨고요. 전직으로 싱가포르 니안 세컨더리 스쿨의 교장도 역임하셨습니다. 이번 발표의 주제는 4차 산업혁명 시대 학습자의 디지털 역량 강화입니다. Preparing students to be digitally ready for the first industrial revolution. 큰 박수로 맞이해 주시기 바랍니다.
안녕하세요. This is something I learned from that technology device that I put on this morning. I gather that that's the greeting that we should exchange in Korean, right? Greetings from Singapore. Thank you for inviting me here to share what we do in Singapore. And I'm Adrian. I'm with the Infocom Development Authority of Singapore, with media added to it now. And today I want to share very quickly with you what we do. And I hope, I want to thank the translators for doing the job first. And I just got in 1 a.m. this morning, and I want to thank Beha for waiting for me at the bus stop, walking me all the way to the hotel to make sure I'm safe. And I'm sure Korea is very safe, right? Okay, I'm not going to talk a lot about the fourth industrial revolution, and I think that this is a topic that we are all grappling with. But what I want you to see is the year at the bottom. That from the first industrial revolution to the second and to the third, you can read this all on the internet, the time span is getting shorter. And I think that adds a lot of stress to what we are doing, whether is it in our job or as teachers, with all the kind of technology that's coming at us. And Apple just released a bigger phone yesterday, isn't it? And so we are now thinking about how much to pay for that phone. And I'm sure Samsung will follow very quickly with their new innovation. So it's really getting, the time span is shorter. And I think it's about our reaction time. How do we react? Because it will impact us eventually. My brother-in-law is a lawyer, and he's facing a lot of stress because his bosses are asking him, how are you going to use artificial intelligence to analyze cases that are coming in? Instead of having employing more clerks, can I just use automation, artificial intelligence to analyze the case before you go to the court? So the lawyers are also facing the stress, right, with the impending change. And I share this with you, and I'm a firm believer that things are already here. I was in Boston recently, and I managed to try ramen cooked by robots. They're not that bad. Maybe, I don't know whether you have kimchi cooked by robots here, but I think it will be here soon. And MIT's giant 3D printer is capable of printing buildings in just 14 hours, right? And we're also talking about how ports in China are going full robotic with autonomous truck and cranes, okay? If you have not been to these places, I've been to some of these places, and I've seen the kind of development that's going on, and I think as teachers, if we don't know about this, we are not going to prepare our children well for the future that is here now. This is my picture. I just went for a holiday in June at Osaka and Kyoto before the earthquake and all the typhoon. And I was staying at hotel, Stargate Hotel, and instead of the usual reception, I got pepper And I know there's a robot moving around Incheon Airport too. I didn't get to see that robot. But this was Pepper telling me about where to go in the hotel. And the one that I thought was really crazy when I was in Japan was the human Uber system, where you can employ somebody to wear the iPad on your face to attend meetings and to deliver a message for you. They call it the human Uber service. All right? Yeah. I don't know, maybe I don't see anyone wearing an iPad here, so I assume the human Uber is not in Korea yet. But something for you to think about, might be a good business venture. All right? Now, I think today, Bruce and then Tom talks a lot about jobs, about what is coming, right? We all have this thing about jobs. So I think there is this thing about, with the fourth industrial revolution, jobs will be automated, industries are disrupted. You know, when I came for this conference, everything was automated. I don't even need a travel agency to develop anything. I check in online. I think most of us, when we book our tour, we don't rely on travel agents anymore. All right? And I think school, at the bottom right corner, I think what's interesting is schools are struggling, I feel, to teach the kind of skills that employers require. So what we call the skills gap. And how a country, how strong you will be, depends on how you prepare this generation to meet the future. Okay? So I talk about tech companies because I work in a place where we work with tech companies. So moving as a principal, leading a middle school, 1,500 kids, I now work in a tech sector. And I think it is important to bring the education perspective into the tech sector so that they don't just keep throwing products at you. And I think it's important to know where the tech giants are. And if you look at the bubbles and look at where the world's largest tech giant is, the bubbles are huge. It's not your regular furniture company or your travel company. It is the tech companies, okay? And this just, I'm sure last month you heard about a month ago, how Apple, the market capitalization has hit 1 trillion, and the latest one was, of course, the Amazon, hitting 1 trillion. Both are tech companies. And you know, that 1 trillion is really bigger than 91% of countries' GDP in the world. And that's just one company, all right? So, you know Justin Trudeau, Prime Minister of Canada, and I like this quote that he said this at the World Economic Forum this year in January. He said, I don't do a lot of coding as Prime Minister, but understanding how algorithms work and understanding the science is so important in equipping Korea, Singapore, of course, Canada for the fourth industrial revolution. And that's what we believe in too, in Singapore. Okay? And I don't need to show you all the research. Please go ahead and read all the research. Research has shown that coding is going to be a very important 21st century skill. And computation, we talk about computational thinking, World Bank reports, CoSN, we saw, I think Tom presented some data on that. Okay? So what do? In Singapore, we think it is important to start young. At the kindergarten level, we teach our children how to do basic sequencing. Now, we are cognizant of the fact that it is important to make sure that it is age and developmentally appropriate. So when we introduce a little bit of basic coding and to kindergarten kids, we stipulate that it should be screen-free. We don't want a child who's 4, 5, or 6 years old to start staring at a screen. And I'm sure if you are a parent like me, you'll be fighting with your teenagers or kid about how much time they spend on the phone. And sometimes we adults are the ones who spend too much time on the phone, right? So it's a screen-free. We curated the solutions from UK, US, the B-board, keyboard. You see this little boy, he's 5. He's putting blocks that he played in kindergarten together. Each block has a certain instruction. It is like scratch, begin, end, move left, move right. So he put all the blocks together and he used a robot called Kibo with a barcode scanner, like what the supermarket does, and scan the blocks in sequence, and then he execute, and the robot will execute the instruction that the boy has put together. Now that is sequencing. That is the very beginning of putting coding instruction. Now, research has shown that if you are good at sequencing, okay, it has a measurable impact on your reading comprehension. And for all of us, I think in Korea, you know, in Singapore, if you are good at sequencing, you will be very good in mathematics. It's about instruction. And I think for a child like that, giving them early exposure to sequencing, instructions, with play is a very, very important thing. Play being the central part. So we call this project Playmaker. All right, you can Google it. There's a video on YouTube. We put it for you to see. All right, and so we use all the non-screen-based solution for the kindergarten kids. But the teacher is important. The teacher must be able to guide the kids to play as a group in order to bring the best out from them. All right, then and when they grow older, in about say 8 to about 15 years old, we introduce a program what we call Code for Fun. Now we think coding must be fun. You know, it can be very boring. Trust me, when I first started coding, I thought, what kind of a person would want to sit in front of a computer and start keying some language that nobody would understand, you know, in order to get the computer to work or something to work. And I think kids will find it that way if you don't scaffold and if you don't bring the coding instruction in a fun way. So we bring robotic kits. So we start with block coding before we go to syntax-based coding. So we scaffold the instruction. And I think it is important, of course, if you don't make the children see what's the relevance of what they're learning, coding will be another meaningless, the instruction will be meaningless. All right? So we do that national-wide for the school. We call it Code for Fun. And if you are more you want to go deeper, you can take on special, what we call the extracurricular activities, join the computer club. In fact, we just work with Apple to run a 158-hour Swift programming for 50 students from computer clubs in Singapore. So if you want to go deeper, you must make provision for the kids to be able to take on some of those challenges. Not everybody wants to take a 158 hours course on Swift programming, all right? So even at the university, I talked about the preschool, at the university, at the National University of Singapore, they are starting to make this computational thinking as one of the compulsory subject. And I know that this is important because even at the university, they are responding. And you know, in the US, basic computing, computational thinking, I'm sure in Carnegie Mellon, Stanford, is one of the most popular courses. In fact, at the National University of Education, the School of Computing, to get into the School of Computing is as difficult to get into the School of Dentistry and Law. So in no time, at the rate the pay is going up for the tech sector, I'm sure people will want to go into School of Computing as much as they want to be the School of Medicine to be a doctor. Okay, I won't be surprised that that will be happening soon. All right. So this is the latest project that we launched last year in Singapore. We think coding is basic, but we think you need to do. And I think Tom, you talk about makerspace. So this is where we are making the next leap. We want to combine coding with making. We think kids should use their hands. And I think I'm quite shocked that some kids today do not know how to change a light bulb or maybe sweep the floor. They are so used to things all done for them. So they need to get back to basics to make things. And I think it's intrinsically motivating when you make something. And that's part of the learning process. So we call it the Digital Maker Project. So, but we introduced a very simple technology that was launched in the UK last year too, called the microbit. This is a microbit. It's not like an Arduino or Raspberry Pi. If I'm speaking Greek or Latin to you, you can Google that. This is something very simple. Microbit, it has a LED display, ports, accelerometer, and it allows kids to use block coding, all right, to program the microbit to do something. I'm going to show you what the kids do. So we launched this last year, and we don't force schools. By the way, all the projects that I've told you about, we do not force schools. It's not a top-down, says all schools must do it. No, we ask school principals to raise their hand and say, I want this project for my school. We think ownership is very important. If, as a government, you provide the support, the top-down support, you want bottom-up initiative. You want schools to own the project. Because if you do anything top-down, you send thousands and millions of microbit to the school, a principal or teacher who does not buy into the project will just keep it in a cupboard, and it will never see the light of the day, and no students will benefit from the whole process. So you must get buy-in, and I'll talk a little bit more about teacher training soon. All right, so what did we do with this project? Okay, we launched it last year. That's our minister then. So we we got 100,000. Singapore's population is only about 5 million, so 100,000 sounds just about right. In the UK, they gave 1 million to grade 7 kids for this coding project. Okay, so the most important thing I feel is teacher training. If you don't get the teacher on board, no project from the BEST system is going to work. So, and we are being a former educator, I think it is important to scaffold and to the training well. So instead of doing the efficient way of things, just give a lecture like that, tell them how to do it, and say, go and do it. No, we don't do that. We split our 3 half-day training. We know teachers are very busy. We get them in on 3 half-days. On the first day of the training, we introduce them to the basic, let them play with the microbit. They are new to that. These are all teachers new to programming. On the second day, we introduce them to peripherals, sensors, the IoT stuff, sensors attached to the microbit and what they can do. On the third day is the fun part. We get them to make a project with a microbit according to the subject that they are teaching. If they are a music teacher, they would program the microbit for music lesson. If they are a physical education teacher, they will do something. Science teacher, now we have good trainers, good teachers teaching them how to do that for their subject. It's strange to ask a music teacher to create a microbit for, say, science. Sometimes the teacher don't buy in if you ask them to do that. So you got to create something that's relevant to them. So this teacher is a home economics teacher. She did a microbit to automate the dipping of tea. So she passed this to her mom. Her mom programmed the timer on the microbit, and the tea was dipped automatically. It was quite fun, all right? So what did the teachers then bring the microbit back to do? There were hundreds of projects. You can go to our website to check it out. These are 3 of my favorites I thought I want to show you. The first project was done by a teacher together with the kids in a girls' school called Tanjong Katong Girls' School. I was a math teacher, and I'm also an English teacher. And one of the most difficult topics to teach in math is Pythagoras theorem and trigonometry, because the students don't understand why they are learning trigonometry. And as a teacher, I used to tell them, just learn the formula, okay? You will pass exams with that. So it's easy to get them to do that. But that's not good enough. I think with the technology that we have today, so the clinometer is one where you use to measure the height of a flagpole or something like that. We tell kids, trigonometry is important. You can estimate the height of a building with trigonometry, but they don't really get to do that. Now, what these kids do, the girls did, was they used the microbit, they coded about 4 lines using block coding. Using the accelerometer and the angle of tilt, they could use with a straw. They created a very rough, simple clinometer, and they did some steps, and then they used Pythagoras theorem to estimate the height of the flagpole in their school. I thought that's fun in a math class. These 2 girls, Clementi Town Secondary School, wanted to change how they learn art. So together with the art teacher, they use the microbit, attach it to some motion sensor with light. So it's like in the museum, the art painting put prominently in their school. When a visitor walks past the painting, it lights up automatically on certain positions. And they made that with traditional art, combining, and so who is to say that they never learned anything about IoT or sensors, right? Coding. So a primary school used the microbit to attach to measure acceleration for their science project. And I think that makes learning fun. Okay? This subject-based for coding, right? This is integrated into project. A microbit can be used for big projects. So one school, working in groups, they developed what they call a panic button using 2 microbit to detect fall. They wanted to use this in a hospice or for their grandparents. If their grandparents fall, it will alert them on the microbit. All right? So they 3D printed a prototype. That was amazing. That school, 3 boys, Geylang Methodist, came together. They saw a problem. And the problem was that the locker, you have lockers in schools, the lock was damaged easily, rust and all that. So they said, using the microbit, can we get rid of locks and have locks from the inside? So they took 2 microbits, they built a prototype, they programmed radio frequency between the 2 microbits and opened the locker with a servo from the inside. I thought that was amazing, right? I mean, it's kids thinking about how to solve problems that they face in schools. The last one, the 4 boys, they are only about 10 years old. They think that when they go for lessons, they are back in, they develop a trigger alarm system. So if somebody wants to take something from their bag when they are not in the classroom, it will trigger an alarm. all right, when they're out of the classroom. By the way, Singapore is very safe. I know the kids like to have this anti-theft thing and all that. I don't know why. Sometimes I ask the kids why. I mean, Singapore is one of the safest countries, but they like to have projects that deals with people taking things and all that. All right, and I'm sure Korea is very safe too, right? Okay, I just want to show you a very quick video. I hope the sound is working. Now, this girl, notice these two girls. It will be in English, and I hope the translator can catch up with the two girls. They are only 10 years old. I think it's important to get girls into coding. Well, I mean, the numbers are low globally. I think we have done a good job in trying to get more girls to code in Singapore. Arifa and Xingyi, they won a competition recently because they came up with a project to solve a problem. They want to redevelop the traffic light junction to help people cross the road better using a microbit. So they thought about it, and this is their solution. I'm going to play the video now.
This is the traffic light sensor that we have made. It's to prevent traffic accidents involving pedestrians to happen. It's green man now, so the pedestrian can cross the road. Once it's red man, the LED strip will light up. When the pedestrian comes to the area, which is too near to the road and may cause an accident, the LED strip will blink, the buzzer will buzz, and the warning message will appear. Once the pedestrian leaves that area, everything stops except for the LED strip because it's still red man. When it turns back to green man, the pedestrian can cross the road again. We were new to microbit, so we had some difficulties with the programming. Luckily, we had help from the trainers and parents. As for the wiring, it had to be based on the coding. So if it's wrong, like one pin is wrong, the whole thing will not work properly. We learned how to troubleshoot. For example, when we meet difficulties, we learn how to solve them and fix them, and how to figure out the problem and identify the solution for it. We also learned how to mind map everything together so that we can list out the different type of pedestrians that in Singapore. We like programming, so if we have the chance to, we will probably create another project, and we hope that maybe one day we will see this in Singapore to help all those with special needs. In Orchard Road, there's this LED strip, but they haven't been blinking and they don't have the buzzer and the warning message. So we hope that they will enhance it and take in our project.
Okay, now, wonderful, right? To get girls. Now, they were talking about failure, right? About how they can't put a pin in and it didn't work. So that's kind of project. And they're talking about how it's difficult to do this. And you know what? These two girls, just a couple of months ago, the Land Transport Authority in Singapore was trying to look at their solution to see whether is it viable in Singapore. I thought that was fantastic. And you know, they were also in the Girls Brigade CCA, and they had a chance to present this to the President of Singapore just 2 months ago. And I think I'm very inspired by what they do. And you know, I feel that, you know, if we continue to inspire our kids, whether boys or girls, we are going to be very ready for of course, the fourth industrial revolution. All right? So I just want to say this. All these things that I've shown you has 3 really important elements. Tony Wagner, Dr. Tony Wagner from the Change Leadership Group at the Harvard Graduate School of Education wrote this book about creating innovators. And I think in Singapore and Korea, we need lots of innovators. Play, passion, and purpose are what are the forces that drive young innovators. There's play, you must make sure that you hope that they're passionate, and you must give them a purpose to be able, in all the projects, not to just solve Pythagoras' theorem for the sake of passing exams. All right? Now, AI. I want to just end quickly with, I was told to just share a little bit about AI. Now, the verdict is still out there. We know AI is coming. People are talking about it. There's a lot of hype, but there's also a lot of uncertainty. But schools cannot wait for the dust to settle. And I think what in Singapore, I know in countries like Japan, in China, they're already introducing AI to be ahead in the global race. In UK too, all right? These are the countries I've scanned not too long ago. And in Singapore, we just started introducing an advisory council on the ethical use of data and AI. We think that's important. Tom, you talk about that. We are keeping our eyes on AI and data, big data. Okay, we see what Tencent is doing. We see what Alibaba is doing. Now, I think basically in China, lots of data, easy for them to mine the data to get the AI out, and lots of application. Now, of course, countries like US and China, there are very different laws on privacy about how you use data. Some say that the US is really good with innovation, but China is very good with implementation. I mean, the debate is still out there, all right? So what did we do for AI in the schools? Not so much as what Bruce was talking about, but what I have with my team is what we call a labs on wheels. We think sometimes schools don't have a lot of technology. It's too expensive to keep replacing technology. So what IMDA does is we curate technology on 4 buses. We retrofit the bus into a lab. So we put the latest technology in the bus, and we bring them to the school to let the school, usually for about 2 to 3 days, and we get all the students to come up to understand the technology. I think understanding the technology is important. So what we did recently was we had an artificial intelligence team bus. So we worked with our industry partner like Amazon, Google. So we had students interacting with Alexa, okay? Try not to name your daughter Alexa because it's the most commonly used name. When you say Alexa, she will look at, I have a friend whose daughter is Alexa. Quick Draw from Google, so they learn facial recognition, how AI writes a script, how AI writes a song. Now, they are not the ones doing it, I just want to clarify. But they learn how it is applied. And we have a lesson plan to show them how to understand AI. They are understanding the applications of AI in the world. And the teachers are also going through this bus to understand how AI is making an impact now at this stage. So we have to keep this current. Currently, my team is developing a cybersecurity bus to show them how cybersecurity works. And we just finished a bus on immersive media, where we work with Microsoft on the HoloLens, Lenovo, big companies to develop how it can be used in education. All right? Now, I think cost can be an issue for schools where they want to introduce some of these new things. So we try to help them. Okay? So the kids enjoy themselves. Machine learning, all that, they understand the concept of machine learning through a simple game of scissors, paper, stone. It can be done. All right? I end by sharing with you what Korea and Singapore, we are very happy. We always put ourselves up there. We say, oh, you know, Korea, Singapore, Taiwan, top 10 in the PISA ranking 2015. Now, let's not be too happy about it. Even when Singapore is up there, I said, let's not be too complacent or rest on our laurels, right? Because when this PISA was out, when we saw Singapore up there, yes, we celebrate, but we were also a little bit worried because what goes up will go down, right? Right? Finland experienced that. So we celebrate, yeah, we put, but I think what was telling is the year later, there was another report that came out. In fact, the Education at a Glance OECD report was just published 2 days ago, right? But it was more on equity. But this one was very telling. It was about skills, right? OECD published test result comparing digital literacy skill a year after the 2015. And Singapore and Korea was not even in the top 10, okay? Singapore and Korea, both high achievers at the school level, are below average in graduate rankings, all right? So an efficient school system might not translate into success in higher education, right? If we are not careful. So we must not be complacent. That's the message. And so in Singapore, we set up Skills Future. We want to get the adults to continue to embrace lifelong learning. And that's our Skills Future. We give every citizen $500 Skills Future to learn, to continue to learn. All right? And I'm also learning now. I'm on the Udemy course, trying to learn some more new analytics. And I know somebody from Udemy is here. I just signed up for my Udemy not too long ago, okay? Now, this is what I worry. So, like Bruce, I want to show you a cartoon, right? When one day our students from Korea and Singapore go for a job interview, and they are asked, I see you did well in school, but what real-world skills do you have? Tests. I can take tests very well. PISA is about taking tests. If you are very good at testing, you have lots of exams, high stakes, you have an edge in the PISA exams, all right? The PISA test, sorry. Okay? So, in my job now, I get to visit lots of tech companies. These are all the latest picture I took when I visited them. The LinkedIn, Google. Google has the Asia HQ in Singapore, the Twitter, Facebook. And I think what I've been hearing from the HR is that they are recruiting people without degree. All right? They are beginning to see that the degree can be overrated if it's not, if you don't have the skills. If you have a degree, you have the skills, I think that you're fine. So skills are very, very important. All right? So what kind of skills are we talking about is to be debated. We don't know, what we don't know we shouldn't be afraid of, but I definitely think everybody should have some basic knowledge of computational thinking, coding, and of course, you ask any educator, you ask a former principal like me, my son is 13 years old, what do you know, when you know what a principal, how a principal lead the family, you know what is important in education. So my son is now learning Python programming. Okay, he plays tennis, he plays chess, he takes art lessons. Okay, he does lots of project work and all that. So a basic, little bit of a dosage on little everything because he's still at the age of discovery. So we don't want to go deep dive at this stage. All right. So this is, I end with this picture. Now we are all, a lot of us are educators here. Yeah, we do the rah-rah, no, we want kids to do well. But if we are not sure where we are heading and the horizon, this is where we might lead our kids. So we have a very important responsibility, not just for our country to stay up there economically, but also for our country to make sure that we prepare our kids well, make sure there's a good balance of challenges. I hope they're not too stressed. We know in the Asian system there's a lot of stress because of the high-stakes testing, but learning should be fun. And that's why we should encourage kids to play. I encourage my son to play. I named my son Kang Le in Chinese, 健康快乐. That means healthy and happy. And I think those are the things I value a lot more when I was running my school. I want all my students always to be healthy and happy when they are learning. All right? So I want to say this because I learned another phrase. Kamsa Hamida. Thank you very much.
Thank you. 두 분 연사의 그 발표는 마쳤고요. 남은 시간 동안은 여러분들이 보내주신 질문을 기반으로 해서 패널 토의를 시작하도록 하겠습니다. 제가 지금 이제 실시간으로 확인하고 있었는데 지금 질문이 한 6개 정도 들어왔거든요. 아직 늦지 않았으니까 여러분들 혹시라도 이제 발표를 다 들으셨으니까 이런 게 좀 궁금하다. 그런데 이게 아직까지 질문이 안 된 것 같다라고 생각하시면은 지금 plenary.simflow.com으로 들어가셔서 연사분 선택하시고 질문하시면 될 것 같습니다. 네, 그럼 지금부터 패널 토론을 시작하도록 하겠습니다. 그럼 먼저 조금은 굉장히 좀 기본적인 질문이 아닐까 싶어가지고요. 제가 우선은 이제 선택하도록 하겠습니다. 영어로 지금 해주신 질문인데요. 제가 선택하면 뜨나요? 네. 네, 이 질문으로 선택을 해봤습니다. 교사와 그리고 뭐 여러 사람들의 역할의 변화에 대해서 질문을 하셨는데요. 그리고 사실 두 분이 다 말씀하신 게 결국에는 교육이 변해야 된다라는 그러한 기본적인 메시지가 있는 것 같습니다. 그래서 이러한 변화를 어떻게 이끌어낼 수 있는지에 대해서 그러기 위해서는 예를 들면은 교사의 역할은 어떻게 재정이 될 필요가 있는가에 대해서 연사분들의 의견을 한번 들어보도록 하겠습니다. You may need more time to, yeah.
I personally believe that the teacher is the most important person in the classroom. Great teachers are able to engage in a relationship with children. A lot of the technologies focus on kids that are already successful, and they develop technologies that support that. And what we're looking at are the kids that are not so successful, and those children need those types of relationships. So to answer who should be involved, the core is the teacher, the learner, and parents should start looking at what are the values that we hold for education, where do we want to go after looking at some of the opportunities for the future, and then start to look at what are those things that are necessary to achieve good problem solving, good skills that will allow children to be successful as they move forward in the future. And I believe that has to start with that core relationship at the beginning. I think the central office's job, the principal, is to support that kind of a decision. And I think Adrian also spoke, it can't be top down, because the people that are farthest away from the classroom are the least likely to understand the impact of the decisions that they make. In New Zealand, they brought together the teachers, the principals, and the community to start looking at what does success for a good school look like for me with that, what's the problem we're trying to solve, and then from the feedback they got from that community, started looking at what do we want to do in our school, how would we measure that or identify what that success looks like, and then how do we collect data not to as a high stakes test, but data to help guide the instruction, and are we on the right track?
I think it is important that we look at teachers' workload. The teachers are incredibly busy, and I think that the only one word I think about a new skill set that a teacher must have today is they must be comfortable with reinventing themselves. Change is hard. Come on, we all know that even when we change a phone, it takes some time for us to get to know the new functions and all that. There's some level of you need to get ready for that change. Nobody likes change. I have not met somebody who says, "Let's change today our furniture at home. Today the sofa is here. Move." People like things as they are. Change is you respond to change. But what I'm more concerned about is the teachers' workload. Everywhere we go, when we see how teachers respond to technology and all that, it is really very surface level. The change or the use is not deep enough. I worry about workload because I think I learned something from Greek medicine. There's this, in the olden days when the Greek practiced medicine, there's this concept called, I don't know how many of you are aware of this concept called bloodletting. Bloodletting is a process where there's, you take bad blood out from your system and you introduce new blood. So when you introduce any new technology, you got to get rid of something from the system. Because if not, you just keep piling more and more things. So I'm sure there's some wisdom in how medicine was developed in Greece long time ago. This concept of bloodletting, taking bad blood out and putting new ones to cure a person. All right? So look at the overall system. Top down tend to be, usually from the top we don't remove things, we just keep piling things. New minister come in, new bosses come in, new initiative, new announcement. But the poor teachers at the ground always suffer because nobody looks at the overall. All right?
Okay, thank you. 다음 질문으로 넘어가 보도록 하겠습니다. 이제 제가 질문을 쭉 보니까 이제 현장에서의 겪는 문제점에 대해서 참 많은 분들이 얘기를 해주시는 것 같습니다. 예를 들면은 뭐 이러한 방향성에 대해서는 동의를 하고 취지는 굉장히 좋은데 이제 현장은 굉장히 어렵다. 예를 들면 입시 문제라든가 그런 것들에 대해서 많이 말씀을 해주셨는데요. 두 연사분들한테 한번 이러한 약간은 이제 한국의 현실이긴 하지만 이제 다른 관점에서 어떻게 좀 생각하시는지, 혹시 해결책은 없는지 들어보도록 하겠습니다. 그와 관련해서 지금 두 개가 있는데요. 제가 볼 때는 거의 비슷한 질문인 것 같아서요. 이걸로 이제 선정을 해보겠습니다. 한국 4차 산업혁명 시대에 대비하는 거 이제 다 이제 좋지만 코딩 교육도 좋고 메이커 교육도 좋지만 현장에서는 아직까지는 대학 입시가 최우선이다. 이럴 경우에 이제 고정관념이 좀 변할 수 있을까? 그다음 만약에 변할 수 있다면은 어떠한 계기가 필요할까라는 질문이었습니다. 연사분들이 조금 시간이 필요하실 수도 있을 것 같아요. 그래서 잠깐 시간을 드리도록 하겠습니다.
Okay, I come from a system like most of you, where how well I do in an exam will determine where I go, which course I do in a university. So there's tremendous amount of stress. But I also know that things are changing, and things don't change overnight. In fact, from where I'm seeing, change comes because of certain ecosystem factors. So for example, we wouldn't think, just about 10 years ago in Singapore, the School of Computing has students who are the weakest, right? Now we have some of the brightest students. So again, it's because of this tech revolution thing that's coming up. But I think you cannot expect universities to change overnight. I'm not an expert in the university system. Some of you might be. I worked 2 years in university with university policy with the Ministry of Education, and I can tell you, it's not an easy piece to move, right? And I think there's a certain level of prestige. Some of them, I would say, I see things changing at the industry level, because I can tell you in some top companies, some top companies like your consultancy companies, your Boston Consulting, McKinsey, they're still looking for the top Ivy League university graduates, right? So they haven't changed. And there are some tech companies, their HR policy, their human resource policy, which you don't get to see, right? I can't tell you which ones they are, but they have a quota system. How many graduates I have in my whole overall employee headcount. Now, those systems, to me, can be quite archaic, it's old. And if you have graduates who cannot deliver the job, your business is going down, you certainly have to reevaluate how you employ. And I see things changing. I'm not so hopeful that things are going to change tomorrow, and I don't think this is something that's going to happen overnight. But if we don't change, right, we don't start turning the ship, we might end up like the Titanic, where the iceberg is right in front of us. So you can't turn a ship immediately. It has to be minor shift over time where you get things. So I think the university must take on this conversation. Do you want to take students with special talent and not just looking at the academic scores alone, whether is it in Korea, Taiwan, Japan, Singapore, right? We are starting to do that in, in Singapore, where kids show their portfolio, they have done these projects, they have done this piece of work, and they get in even though they do not meet the cutoff point, but because of a special talent that they have and passion that they have, they got in. So I think the answer lies in the wisdom of the faculty, the university admin. I don't know how much the Ministry of Education in Korea has over, in terms of policy over the entrance exam, but I think this conversation must start with parents, with the industry, with it's all in the ecosystem. Yeah, Tom.
In our schools that are in our community that are more affluent and the kids are successful and they're going to the highest level of college within the United States, change there is very difficult. If it's not broken, don't fix it. And so when you implement change, there's going to be a lot of pushback because it could decrease the number of students going into the highest level of college. The question I think that has to be asked is that if you believe that the future, 15 years in the future, is going to look very much the same as it is today, then you shouldn't change. But if you think that the future is going to require a different set of skills, or that the future is going to hold opportunities that we may not be preparing students to be successful in, then your choice has to be, we have to do something differently. Adrian talked about it's good to be at the top in some categories, but you're not at the top in all categories. And will you be there in 10 years? So I think it's easier at times to go in the more unsuccessful schools because they're willing to take the change and that they see the risks are such that if they don't do change, they'll go away. And so when we work with schools that are not performing well, then we're bringing a set of tools and resources that are different than those that are doing much better. Like our more affluent schools are a lot more competitive because they want to be the best at everything than our lower performing schools. And our job is to move all of those forward. Now I have found that our higher performing schools are very competitive with other high performing schools. So if you can get a community that wants to do something different and they do that successfully, the other schools are going to want to be equal to or better than that group. And I think there's a variety of different things that we need to do, and the education system needs to address a variety of skills. For those students that want to do well in arts and humanities, then there needs to be programs to support those. If they're going to be good in engineering and mathematics, then it's another set of skills. And so having a variety of programs is probably a better choice for communities and the parents, and can choose the school that they want their children to go to because it emphasizes the values or the strengths that those parents believe are important. And as was mentioned a little earlier, the pathway to college is going through a redefinition of what's their role and how do they work and what does college mean. Is that a campus experience? Can we have college and have an online experience? So as colleges, at least in the United States, start looking at the challenges that they face and how do they address big businesses that are now looking for skills that perhaps don't require a college degree, I think all of that has to change in our society. So I guess the big point is, if you think the future is going to be the same as it is today, then don't change. But if you think that there's going to be something different, then it's important to start looking at what are the skills that my grandson in that picture will need to be successful.
네. 전체 시스템이 다 같이 바뀌어야 된다 그런 말씀하셨고요. 그리고 사실 학교 밖은 다 바뀌고 있고 사실 대학도 많이 바뀌고 있습니다. 그런 변화에 대해서 인지를 해야 된다라는 그런 메시지를 주신 것 같습니다. 다음 질문으로 넘어가겠습니다. 이렇게 제가 보니까 지금 AI에 관해서 좀 질문을 많이 하셔가지고요. 같이 묶어가지고 한번 물어보도록 하겠습니다. 이 질문이 조금은 재미있었는데요. 저는 AI가 이제 예를 들면은 뭐 프로그래머가 지금 예를 들면 이것도 사실 AI로 다 대체되지 않겠냐. 그러면 우리가 학교에서 코딩을 가르칠 이유가 있을까요? 라는 질문인 것 같습니다. 자, 이 질문에 대해서 두 분의 말씀을 한번 들어보도록 하겠습니다. 비슷한 질문으로 예를 들면은 지금 고등학교에서 코딩을 가르칠 필요가 있을까요? 라는 질문도 있었습니다. 자, 코딩 교육의 약간 이제 뭐 필요성이라든지 미래 방향에 대해서 조금 두 분의 의견을 들어보도록 하겠습니다.
Okay, let me just say that I learned music. It was compulsory for me when I was in school, but I didn't go to the Juilliard school to learn how to dance or to do ballet. But it doesn't mean that we, because of that. Now, so in the same token, we are not teaching coding or computational thinking to turn everyone into a computer programmer. I think let's be very clear about that. I think have the world that we are living in, this is a response to change. The world that we are living in is no longer analog only, it's digital. You need to know how your data is mined when you use Facebook. I mean, with the recent scandal with Cambridge Analytica, I just learned, I just took on a course. I thought, it's important to learn to defend your company, your organization, if you know how people attack your organization or how fraud works. So I went to recently attend a course where I found out that, with $8 I can up a person's Instagram-like followership by 1,000 at $8 Of course, the click farms, there are many click farms here. Now, you teach coding because the world we live in is so different. You want them to have an appreciation. And you cannot keep teaching them coding in the classes. I worry because the best programmers I meet in the industry, they didn't take a lot of lessons. They self-learn, they find out what's on the internet, they write their own languages, they don't keep attending workshops after workshop, class after class on coding. And I think it is important we don't, in school, we are not advocating that coding is so intense. I think there will be students who want to take coding at a deeper level, and these kids, they must know where to find the course if they don't know how to be self-directed. But the best programmers I know, they teach themselves and they learn. And everyone tells me that you can learn anything from YouTube these days. So basic coding. I want to highlight, I'm not saying that you're teaching coding to turn everybody into a computer programmer. It is about responding to the digital world, a very digitalized world that we're living in. The kids must be able to see how things work. Why there's no free lunch in the world. When you click I agree to all the social media, somebody is using something. There's an algorithm at the back end. Why your post is always on the top when somebody is at the back end is doing something. So if you are aware of that, or if your parents are aware of that, you don't anyhow spread fake news and things like that. There are many, many things that they need to know. So I hope I clarify this. It's not about going really, really deep about coding. It's really to introduce them and to be age and developmentally appropriate, all right?
And briefly, it isn't really coding or maker spaces or problem-based learning. Those are all kind of the symptoms of what we're trying to teach. I think it's more of developing the skills that a computer scientist might need, which is going to be problem solving and innovation and collaboration and communication. Right now, those are things that are popular within our schools. My school district just adopted a K through 12 computer science model, but not to put computer science in, but to develop the skills that are important. And I agree, I can't define what computers will look like in 15 years, but the skills that they need are there. And I'd like to emphasize that also this digital citizen role in deciding what we're trying to prepare our kids for in the future is important. I don't think it means to be a class for digital literacy or computer science. It's more of what are those things that we're seeing are important and they're growing in importance, and how do we blend them into our curriculum. And then again, it isn't everybody has to take computer science to be successful. There still needs to be a variety of pathways that have emphasis on different aspects of learning, because it's changed over time.
Thank you. 결국에는 그 코딩 자체가 뭐 목적이라기보다는 그거를 이제 수단으로 이제 활용을 해서 결국에는 이제 목적은 뭐 자기주도 학습이나 아니면은 문제 해결 능력에 있지 않냐라는 게 공통적인 의견이신 것 같습니다. 그 다음에 이제 또 약간 이제 공통되게 나왔던 질문이 있어서요. 요거를 같이 보도록 하겠습니다. 질문이 계속 많이 들어오네요. 네, 사실 이거를 골라봤는데요. 지금까지 두 연수아분들이 굉장히 어떻게 보면은 좋은 점, 테크놀로지의 좋은 점을 많이 부각해서 이제 가능성, 변화의 가능성에 대해서 말씀을 해주셨는데, 사실 현장에 계신 분들은 맨날 이제 뭐 느끼는 게 부작용이 무엇일까라는 게요. 문제점은 무엇일까라는 점인 것 같습니다. 그래서 이 질문을 통해 가지고 역기능이나 뭐 부작용, 그거를 이제 어떻게 해결할 수 있을까? 그리고 이제 예를 들면은 국가 차원, 조금 더 이제 글로벌하게 국가 차원이나 학교 단위에서 할 수 있는 프로그램, 뭐 전략들이 무엇이 있을지 두 분을 통해서 의견, 아이디어를 한번 들어보도록 하겠습니다.
Okay, nothing is perfect. So forget about raising a perfect child. Forget about educating a perfect student. Now, if you can't even do that, no system is perfect. Now, one thing I'm concerned about is really screen time. How much screen time? One of my worry for Singapore is the number of kids, exposed to screen with myopia. I mean, I walked to a class recently of 11-year-olds, and half the class were wearing spectacles already. So, and they have lots of screen time. I think, they're exposed to screen time early. And I mean, their parents, that when parents upgrade their phone, they pass their phone to their kids, right? So they have that at home. So I think medical issues, screen time, how much time they spend, or are they losing out in terms of the social skills? Because like over dinner, before you eat, you don't say grace anymore. You take a picture of your food to tell people how much what you do and what you eat. And I saw this too at the train station. It's interesting. Everywhere I go, nobody talks in the train anymore. Everybody is on their phone. And you know, I must say Korea, you're responsible for that in Singapore. Because I see a lot of Singaporeans in a train watching Korean drama, okay, when they're taking the train. Okay, and I think you're responsible for that. Okay, so my wife does that too when she's taking a train. So nobody say, look around and see that. So I think we have to look at some of this societal impact, and that's why I gave you an example earlier. At the preschool level, there's no need to introduce screen to them so early. So find alternatives to get them to play. Problem solving, work with friends, and when the kids were playing with the toys, what I didn't get a chance to tell you, when they were playing with the toys, they were all quarreling, they were fighting about who want to play the robot first, and the teacher had to mediate. The teacher had to encourage turn taking, respect, values. So even in teaching all these things, right, turn taking, respect, mediating, negotiating, all this come in. It's just technology will always be a tool. All right, it's an important tool. I'm not downplaying it as a tool, but it's an important tool that will change our life. But ultimately, it is a human connection, and I don't think teacher will be replaced. I think if a teacher, like what Tom mentioned about that, he talks about relationship building. In fact, the best teachers that I know, I remember, is not one who gave me the best technology in class. It was the one who spent the most time with me, talking to me about life, and about what I should do, and giving me the most face-to-face time. I go back to visit this teacher every Teacher's Day to thank her for the impact she made in my life. And I think that's the thing. The human connection must not be lost. And that's why we introduced from STEM, we put A, art. So the studying of humanities will always be important. An algorithm without ethics, an algorithm without heart will eventually fail society. That's my view.
I live in the southwest part of the United States, so it's a little bit more rural. It's a high desert area. And I think in the late 1800s, there was a choice between two communities where we're going to bring a train in, and where was the train depot going to be. And we had one community that said, that train is going to bring in prostitution and crime and people from the outside, and they're going to change us, and we don't want that train station in our community. And another community, the community that I'm in, said, train is the way of the future. We want that train. It's going to bring in jobs and prosperity. And both communities were right. But the community that didn't let the train in doesn't exist anymore, because the technology was coming whether they wanted it or not. And so as we look at, there's some big problems that we have with the use of technology. We mentioned some about privacy. What should people have and what shouldn't they have? We talked about people trying to get into others' data, and then what do they do with that? And it may have been started for a good reason, but can then be turned into a bad reason. And the fake news issues that we're seeing, the echo chambers where people just keep getting fed a certain perspective on information has separated our societies. And this is where, if we don't address the ethical use and create some values around the use of the technology, then that technology is going to be negatively impacting us at a greater and greater level. I really have some fear about the divisions, at least in my country, because of technology that has impacted us. But it's not going away, so it's important for us to stop and start to look at what are those things that we value in our community, in our society, and how do we make sure that the decisions about the appropriate use of these are made, and they're made at a local level where it can be enacted in a faster way. So I don't expect technology to drop. I have to say, on my 14-and-a-half-hour flight over here, I was really glad that I had my cell phone with some things to entertain me and a screen in the back of the seat, because that's a long time that technology offered some benefit for me.
네, 뭐 테크놀로지는 계속 변화하지만 휴먼 터치, 휴먼 커넥션 이런 것들, 인간에 대한 존엄성이나 윤리, 그다음에 도덕성 교육은 더 중요하지 않을까라는 이제 메시지를 주셨습니다. 그다음에 이제 국제 학회다 보니까 외국 분들도 좀 있으신 것 같아요. 그래서 이제 요 질문이 들어왔는데 한번 보도록 하겠습니다. 이제 그 교육 분야에서 이제 테크놀로지를 활용함에 있어서 개발도상국, 뭐 아프리카나 사우스 웨스트 아시아 같은 곳에서는 이제 많은 어려움이 있는데 이런 곳에서는 또 어떻게 이제 성공적으로 이제 ICT를 활용할 수 있을까에 대해서 한번 의견을 들어보도록 하겠습니다.
So again, I think we have to start with what problem are we trying to address. And that's in the community because we have wealthy sections in the community and we have more affluent sections in the community as well as around the world. I think as Adrian mentioned, or maybe it was Bruce mentioned about Africa and India, there's a different challenge that they're faced with, and those ways that they address that may be leveraged in the United States, but for a different thing. I wouldn't take from one school or from one community and say, this worked there, let's put it over here, because it may be a different set of issues that we have to face. I do believe that technology provides us an opportunity to solve some of the more critical challenges that we have, but it can also, in the case of equity, it can create a bigger and bigger divide. So we need to make sure that when we come into the community, we look at what are the challenges we're facing, what resources can we leverage to change those things, and then has there an impact that we didn't anticipate because we put those new technologies in. So it's a dynamic process. I think those are probably the same skills that the children that were trying to figure out how to cross the road were also trying to address. And as we implement technology in our different schools, whether it's blended learning or personalized learning, how much time people are using their devices and when is it appropriate to use a device, I think my community, even though I'm a member of the chair of COSIN, which is an ed tech organization, I don't think we start with how do we put more technology into our schools. I think that's the wrong question to try to solve. It's really what challenges are we facing, and if technology is appropriate, I'll put that in. But it isn't the fact that I put the technology in that things changed. It was I responded to a challenge my community had, and we used appropriate technologies to help solve that problem.
I'll just give you a personal example of one of those countries that mentioned there. We do have companies with a very good heart. They donated lots of washing machines to some, I saw how this company donated lots of washing machines to some of those farming rural houses. And 1 month later, I remember this friend of mine who was involved in this project. They found that they thought they were doing a good thing to help those community with just an invention like the washing machine. But the folks there had problems with electricity, right? And then even those with electricity, they didn't need a washing machine. In fact, what most of them did was they used washing machine to wash their potatoes to clean up. They don't use it for their clothes. And I think that's really about understanding needs. And I'm also a fan of, we all learn Maslow's hierarchy of needs. I think you need to meet the basic needs first before you self-actualize, and then you need to, the safety aspect, for example, is important. I also know of a country there that went on a one-to-one computing project. They gave the kids one-to-one, but by giving the kids one-to-one, the school's kids were robbed most of the time. When they went home, they were the victims of lots of robbery, because when the not-so-nice people know about this school, a big company donated a one-to-one project in that school, those kids were robbed of their computer. So safety was a very important thing in that community. So I think, yes, understanding the needs, the problems first. I've never asked the question, more technology for the school, because it's really, to me, education technology, the first word is education, right? Then it's not technology education, it's education technology. That's what we are here to talk about. So pedagogy must lead technology, not the other way around. That's my view. So understand the needs first, of course.
네, 개발도상국에 갈 때 이제 저희 관점으로 볼 게 아니라 그 현지 분들이 원하는 게 무엇인지를 잘 파악을 하고 그곳에 이제 환경과 문화를 고려한 적정 기술적인 관점이 필요하다라는 메시지를 주셨던 것 같습니다. 자, 그러면 시간 관계상 마지막 질문을 드리도록 하겠는데요. 상당히 많은 분들이 싱가포르 이제 그 교육과 관련해서 질문을 주셨어요. 그래서 제가 하나를 마지막으로 골라서 답변을 듣고 마치도록 하겠습니다. This question only goes to Andrew. So, 싱가포르도 이제 사실 한국과 많이 상황이 비슷하거든요. 입시 위주의 교육이 많이 이제 일어나고 있는데 그럼에도 불구하고 이제 발표에서 보면은 굉장히 많은 혁신들이 학교에서 일어나고 있는 것 같고 특히 뭐 코딩 교육이나 메이커 교육도 상당히 좀 잘 되고 있다라는 느낌을 받으셨을 거예요. 그래서 혹시 그런 점에 있어서 뭔가 특별하게 정책적으로 뭐 지원하신 거라든지 뭔가 뭐 시크릿이 있지 않을까라는 질문인 것 같습니다.
Okay, I used to work in the Ministry of Education before I joined the Infocom sector. And I know that in Singapore, we are never contented with what we have. We are a small country, unlike Korea and the US. So we are always scanning, we're always on our toes. And that maybe add a little bit stress to our life. We are always thinking about being a small country, you got to innovate, you got to be exceptional. And to do that, you cannot be satisfied with what you have. We think the education system has served us well. In fact, what I shared with you is something, it's just a subset of what the Ministry of Education is doing. If you Google the Ministry of Education's latest moves, it was written in just the latest publication in The Economist. Every school in Singapore is going into applied learning. All right? The Ministry of Education is giving about 150,000 Singapore dollars over 3 years to schools, right, to implement applied learning. That means applied learning it's not just academic alone, right? So that your coding, you can even take on some non-technology projects as long as it's applied. The learning is more applied than just academic. Now, it took us some time to get there. In fact, in terms of the debate and all that, the funding, the training of the teachers, it didn't happen overnight. It took about 5 to 6 years. So I think it is not something that, again, I stress this again, it doesn't happen overnight. You must be able to see, we traveled to many countries. We went to Germany, we went to the Benelux countries. We saw how, if you lose the engineering strength, okay, if you don't focus on math and science, you're not going to have workers who will be ready to take on the new jobs. Singapore is a very open economy. We rely on MNCs coming in, right? And they want to put their HQ in Singapore, and we need to have people who are ready to take on the jobs. If not, you're not going to attract good companies, and you're not going to create good jobs for your people. And so because of that, you need to be scanning all the time. So I think that's important. So I think for Korea, yes, I see similarities. So I think I don't know how fast the change is in Korea. I haven't been keeping up with what is happening in the Korean schools, but we have seen pocket of excellence. In fact, last month I was at the Singapore Makers Fair, and I saw 2 Korean groups of students who were at the Maker Fair. They were designing a smart home with Arduino and Raspberry Pi. I don't know which school they came from, but they told me, and there was a translator. They were explaining their projects very passionately in Korea. So I thought, wow, that's really, really amazing. I mean, and they were 15-year-olds, but all boys. I didn't see any girls. I just want to tell you, they were all boys in that 2 group. So they did a fantastic project. It was raw, but you could tell that they were not focusing on academics, or they were very concerned about how they want to develop their prototype. And I think that's a start. So if we see more Korean students doing that, and if you have inspired principals who dare to try new things, to test a little bit, you're not overhauling the system, but some incremental change, and get the teachers together with you to do the change. So maybe it's good for you to see what's out there. And I think for a country like Korea, Singapore, we have to always look at what's out there. So maybe that gives you a good chance to travel, get your principal or your school system to fund you to travel to different countries to see what's the best practice. Don't take everything wholesale. come back, see what works for your country, and that has worked for Singapore. In fact, I don't know whether you're aware of this. Do you know that in Singapore, all principals have to go through an executive program? It's like a 6 months executive program, and one of the program is innovation. So during when I was undergoing principal training, I was sent to Finland for about 3 weeks to understand the system better, right? And to pick up the best ideas from Finland to introduce and to adapt. So I think looking outwards is important, and understanding your local milieu, what works for you. So don't just look within, look out and then implement and change with your operating context.
네. 싱가포르 같은 경우에 이제 어플라이드 러닝이라는 정책을 학교에서 하면서 재정적 지원이라든지 교사 교육 이런 것들이 자동적으로 따라왔고 변화에 이르기까지 5년 이상의 상당한 시간이 걸렸다라는 이제 말씀을 해주셨습니다. 결국 변화에는 시간이 필요하다라는 말씀이신 것 같습니다. 자, 그러면 이로써 그 플래너리 세션을 마치도록 하겠습니다. 두 연사분들이 정말 많은 인사이트를 주셨는데요. 마지막으로 큰 박수 드렸으면 좋겠습니다.